So there's two words that completely terrify me. They mess with my head. And maybe you can relate, or maybe I'm just a crazy person. But the two words are, what if? What if? Now, I'm not talking about what if X event happens, like, what if we get bombed with a nuclear warhead, or what if another COVID breaks out, or what if the market crashes, or whatever. I'm not talking about future what if. The what if that messes with me is things that have already happened in the past. Decisions I've made, actions I've taken, where I think about, what if I hadn't done that thing? Okay, here's the list is endless, but here's a few examples. Some big ones for me. What if I had not worked at the prison? Would I have encountered the pain of looking for another career, which then led me to what I do today? What if I hadn't opened an email that contained an invitation to join a webinar which taught me about overages? What if I had not gone to that webinar? And what if I had not decided to invest in that program that I learned in that webinar? Where would I be today? And that messes with me. Not that it, and I understand too, it's not like super helpful to dwell on the past, right? However, thinking about these what ifs, specifically for my business, but there's a host of other things too, right? What if I hadn't bought our first house, which then I sold later on, which brought the capital which allowed me to start my own business? Or what if I hadn't swiped right on the old Tinder app? That's how I met my wife. Would I be where I am today? Would I live where I live? Would I have my boys? What if I had swiped left? Crazy stuff. Stuff like that. It just messes with me. But the point, I know it's not good to dwell on the past, but it reminds me of two lessons. Okay, two lessons that I wanted to share real quick. Lesson number one is risk often precedes reward. Okay, a lot of the good things that have come about in my life, and a lot of the quote unquote successes, those came after a risk was taken. Okay, and sometimes the risk is financial, right? Sometimes you risk money. Maybe you invest in a product, or you make an investment that may or may not yield a return. Sometimes it's not financial. Sometimes it's risking being rejected, getting your feelings hurt. Okay, sometimes it's risking your health, maybe. If you're working in a toxic environment, whether that's physical health or mental health, either one. There's all sorts of risks, right? Every time we get in a car, there's a risk that we could get in a car accident and either die or, get injured. Like, risk cannot be avoided. And if we try to avoid risk completely, all that does is guarantee that nothing will change in life. And even going down to like my business, right? And thinking about specific deals that I've been involved in. I think about, Miss Honeycutt. Had I not sent her a letter, would I have been able to help her recover that 60 grand? Had I not gone door knocking and reached out to Mr. J and found him on the sidewalk in front of his house, would his 200 grand still be sitting with the court? Had I not got on a plane and gotten help from my partners to help find Mr. L out in Virginia, who was in a homeless shelter, and I was able to find him with my partners, and then get my attorney to send him a wire for his $500,000 that was waiting for him after his foreclosure sale. All these things, like, what if I hadn't done those small things? Whether it's sending a letter, knocking on a door, making a phone call, getting on a plane, what would have happened? But all of those things involved risk, some more than others. But then after the risk was taken, wonderful things happened. Okay, now, does that always occur? No, sometimes you take a risk and you lose, right? Sometimes you lose money, sometimes you get hurt, whether it's physically or maybe your ego gets hurt, you get your feelings hurt, whatever. That happens too. Like, there is no 100% guarantee of success. In fact, there are no guarantees. The only guarantee is that someday we're all going to die. That's the only guarantee. But what I've learned and just thinking about those what ifs is that a lot of great things have come from taking on risk. And so I just wanted to put that out there and just, pose this question. What risks are you avoiding right now in your life? That maybe if you just took that risk, things would be completely different for you. Okay? Now, of course, consider the following, like, how can I mitigate the risk? Is the reward greater than the downside? If I take this risk and it doesn't work out, is it going to bury me and end me? Then maybe don't take that risk. But if the upside is much greater than, the potential loss, why not take the risk, right? And it doesn't just have to involve business. It can be anything, whether it's relationships or health or whatever, but thinking back on some of the what ifs, like what if I hadn't done X, Y, Z, helps me understand that and remember a lot of really good things come from taking risk and managing those risks, mitigating those risks as best you can. So maybe consider what risks you're trying to avoid and consider if maybe it's time to just take the risk and stop avoiding the thing that scares you, depending on what it is, right? Just something to think about. Random thoughts of the day.